Isn't it kind of strange how sports work sometimes? So the Bills this past Sunday, they beat the Jets 20-12. Like I just said, they scored 20 points with 14 first downs, 232 total yards of offense, just 130 total passing yards. Josh Allen's passing yards minus the sack yardage. In week 3 against Miami, a game which I'm sure you remember oh so fondly, the Bills had 500 yards of offense, 497 to be exact, 382 through the air, 31 first downs. They scored 17 points. They finished with 19. The famous butt punt got them the other two. But they scored 17 points on 497 yards of offense, 382 through the air, 31 first downs. This past Sunday against the Jets, 14 first downs, 232 total yardage, 130 passing. That's less than half of the first downs, less than half of the total yards, just about a third of the total passing yards, and they scored more points. So strange. You know, there's obviously other factors that come into play there. There's turnovers, and the Bills got a nice punt return from Nyheim Hines to shorten the field for them. That's, you know, those things happen throughout the course of just about each game. It's just goes to show you that Week 3 game against Miami is just, we've mutually agreed to this. This is like, it was an anomaly. Just a total anomaly. Just the randomness of the league. They lost. That's why you should feel much more confident about their chances against Miami this upcoming Saturday night. And obviously we're going to talk about Miami in a little bit, but I want to obviously rehash the Jets game, talk about some of the roster moves that have been made in the past couple of days, because the output, I think they're all kind of connected. The offensive output from the game on Sunday against the Jets, you know, I've mentioned it 3 times already, the low first down totals, the low passing yardage totals, have led people to have discussions, things I've seen, read, heard, like, oh, the issue with the Bills is blank. Or the problem even. If that's a worse word than issue, I don't know. The problem with the Bills is this. They don't have anyone else they can trust besides Allen and Diggs. They don't have a trusty third down guy. Okay. The Bills are 10-3, guys. They are 10-3. They are the 1 seed in the AFC. We have a quarter of the season to go. The Bills are in first place in their division by 2 games. In the AFC by a tiebreaker over Kansas City, who they've beaten. Like, what more could you really have asked for? Did you know they're second in third down conversion percentage? They are, let's just get some other numbers here. They're second in total yards. They're third in overall first downs, 6th in passing yards, second in yards per drive, second in scoring percentage, that's the percentage of drives that end in score, 4th in total points, and we're talking about what's wrong with the Bills. Just because the offense doesn't feel as fun as it did last year, or maybe even the first, 4-6 weeks of the season here. Josh Allen only has 1 300-yard passing game since the bye week. That came against in a losing effort against Minnesota. So, I mean, I guess I get why people are bringing that up. I just don't know if it's necessarily problematic. Before, there was this whole, well, the Bills are front runners. And I even said that a little bit. The Bills are, if they're not winning by 30, they're losing because they don't know how to win these close games. Now they're winning games ugly sometimes, which is, sometimes it's like a hallmark of playoff teams. Like, oh, these guys, they know how to win ugly. But for the Bills, it's being made out to be a bad thing. And I don't really understand that perspective. Granted, I am always for trying to make the team better. But, it's gotten people obsessed with this idea, of needing Odell Beckham. And I've talked about that. I don't think the Bills need Odell Beckham. And I think that idea is pretty much, dead at this point with the signings of John Brown and Cole Beasley, which we're going to talk about in just a sec. I want to know where the pessimism comes from. What does that derive from? Because the Jets held them to 14 first downs and 200 total yards in a game that the Jets lost? I mean, the Jets are just a bad matchup, I think, for the Bills. I think that's entirely fair to say. The only 2 times that the Bills have failed to reach 20 first downs this year were against the Jets. The 2 lowest passing yardage outputs this year are against the Jets. Their two lowest point totals this year, not the two lowest, Miami I guess would be included. Two of their three lowest point totals this year are against the Jets. The Jets are an up-and-coming team. Like they might be like the whole quarterback away type of thing. Mike White has got them playing better, of course. They're a threat passing the football now. You know, if you get Breece Hall back into the mix, you already have a fantastic wide receiver in Garrett Wilson. You have a fantastic corner in Sauce Gardner, a fantastic defensive lineman in Quinnen Williams, an all-pro linebacker in C.J. Mosley. Like the Jets have players. The Jets have improved that roster dramatically in the time that Robert Saleh has been the head coach. And he is kind of still coming into his own as a head coach. And I think that he's certainly got the support of the locker room. I like the Jets. I don't like the Jets, but I like what they've done with the team. They have maybe an all-time, like I just alluded to, an all-time draft class this past year. And, you know, they're still down Mekhi Becton, one of their former first-round picks. They're down Elijah Vera Tucker, who's a fantastic guard. They're deep. They're becoming a deep team. They're just missing that one piece, and it's really at the quarterback position. Mike White is a nice player. I think it's the difference between him and Zach Wilson that makes people fall in love with Mike White, and his willingness to stand in the pocket and take absolute poundings from Ed Oliver and Matt Milano. Like, I mean, I thought the guy folded like a lawn chair 2 times and came back both times. Like, football people respect the heck out of that. That will, at the very least, earn him a lifelong career in the league as like a backup quarterback. And maybe he finds a place to start somewhere. I'm not sure that I would necessarily buy into him as a franchise guy. Like I said, I think that the love for him kind of stems from how bad Zach Wilson has been. There's still an investment there in Zach Wilson. That's really the number one first-round pick, the primary first-round pick that they've missed on over the past couple of seasons is their quarterback. So if they can figure that position out, I mean, they're going to be contenders. I mean, they're 7-6 as it is, and you know they've been playing Zach Wilson and Mike White. So, you know, I could talk more, I guess, about the Jets game, about the 10 punts to start the game. The Bills ended up scoring on 4 straight possessions after that. You know, they scored 20 consecutive points, not consecutive points because the Jets came out of half with a nice touchdown drive. But that was really all the Jets had put together all day. Every time they made progress down the field, they would take a bad sack. They fumbled twice. They still remind you that they're the Jets here and there. And I think that's where the quarterback thing comes into play. I mean, if I were the Jets, you can love Mike White and keep him as a backup, you know, and still strive to be better at that position. But I was very impressed with the Bills' defense all day. I thought they obviously did an outstanding job. The offense obviously wasn't great. They were downright bad for the first 5 drives of the game. They finally start putting some first downs together, stringing some first downs, put some points on the board, and they have 20. And they felt good. I know that it got close at the end a little bit there, because the Bills were failing to run the clock out. When they got the ball back after the Michael Carter fumble with like 5.5 minutes to go, I'm thinking, okay, let's run this clock out, or let's run this down and punt at like the 2-minute warning, and then they're going to be out of timeouts, and they're going to need some miracle onside kick, 2 scores and stuff. Like, I thought that's where the game was headed. But I mean, the Bills went nowhere. 3 plays, -5 yards, punt. And the Jets, much to their credit, came down. They kicked a field goal. They ended up able to kick it deep because they still had all their timeouts they'd preserved. And they had a shot at the end. I'm not sure I was really ever concerned. This just felt like a game right from like the first 2 or 3 drives. You're like, okay, 17 points is winning today. And I don't even think that was necessarily because of the weather. I think like Tony Romo, I watched the broadcast back I was at the game, obviously, and I watched the broadcast back, and Tony Romo and Jim Nantz were making way too much about the weather. Tracy Wolfson, too. Like, they were asking Sean McDermott, like, how in this weather do you do that? And, like, Sean McDermott's like, it's not really about the weather. Like, we just need to, you know, execute or whatever. buzzword he wanted to use there. It's like the weather wasn't that bad. It really seriously was not that cold. I did not even put a hat on. I had a hoodie over him. I did not put a hat on. I didn't even wear gloves for the first half. I just kind of kept him in my hoodie like this, and I was fine. Like, too much was being made about the weather. The same might not be able to be said this Saturday against Miami. But before we talk about that, I want to talk about the roster moves the Bills made. They bring Brandon Bryant back. Obviously, that's not the number one thing people are talking about. It would obviously be Cole Beasley to the practice squad. And that, which is something I brought up in the first couple minutes of my video, that's something that kind of comes from this perception or that the Bills aren't good on third downs. They don't have a reliable option outside of Stephon Diggs. And I think that there's a case to be made there. I'm certainly willing to have that discussion with you. The league was about to be done with Cole Beasley. I'm happy with it. Don't get me wrong. I just think that fans are like, oh, Beasley's back. Oh my God, yep, back. Well, welcome back to 2021 Bills offense. No. They brought John Brown back too. They've elevated him the past couple games, and he almost got loose for a touchdown this past Sunday against the Jets. Nice play by Sauce Gardner to break it up. But it sounds like they've been targeting him like crazy. The league was pretty much done with John Brown after the Bills cut him. The Bills were on the hook for him for $9 million. The Bills cut him, and he went to Jacksonville's practice squad and faded off. And they brought him back after he'd been out of football. Cole Beasley was going to be on the hook for what was it, $6 or $8 million with the Bills, or it's about $6 maybe. Can't remember exactly what it was. And they cut him, and then he didn't really hook on anywhere, and that could be because of his presence on Twitter and outspoken feelings towards some of the rules and regarding, the whole pandemic and whatnot. That could have been related, of course, but the league was kind of done with him until Tom Brady was like, get me this guy. We are so low on receivers, get me this guy. And he played a couple games for Tampa Bay, and then he saw his position on the depth chart, and he was like, I'm good here. I don't need to be here. I'd rather just not play. I'd rather just be home with my family. So, the league was kind of done with them, both. And it's fun and cool that we're getting the 2020 band back together, Diggs, Brown, Beasley, and Davis even. Davis falling back into that 4 slot now, which he was pretty effective in, in 2020. But I don't think it's just going to be, oh, yep, the Bills are back. It's cool. Buffalo as a community just seems like there's an obsession with nostalgia. And not that that's not even really nostalgia, because it's still pretty recent. Cole Beasley was on the team last year. John Brown was on the team 2 years ago. It's just this, we want things to be the way they were. Take the goat head. The Bills, the Sabres fans pounded the table for royal blue jerseys. They got them. They pounded the table for the goat head to come back. It's back. And the jerseys are flying off the shelves. You can't even get a goat head jersey, despite the fact that the Sabres haven't made the playoffs in 11 years. That's another point altogether. But I think they tie in together somewhat. That's about jerseys. This is about rosters. I don't know. I'm not trying to rain on the parade. I don't want to be ants at a picnic. I think there's a very good chance that Beasley is elevated. Are they going to elevate them both, Brown and Beasley? Brown has one practice squad elevation left before he either has to sit on the practice squad or be signed to the active roster. Once we get to the playoffs, this won't be an issue. They'll be able to elevate them both whenever they want. But I think you only get to 2 practice squad elevations. Is that going to be the move every week? 2 receivers? Because they only have 4 active receivers on the roster right now. Diggs, Davis, McKenzie, and Shakir. And it seems pretty clear that they are trying to bump some of those guys down the depth chart a little bit. McKenzie maybe back into that gadget jet sweep type of role, despite the fact that he wants to be a little bit more involved. Shakir maybe just not ready, and I don't think it's necessarily because of his pass catching ability. I saw some clips of him not necessarily missing blocks, but just leaving more to be desired, I guess, in terms of different nuances of the offense, blocking, running routes to get other people open type of stuff, that type of stuff that people pay attention to, that football people especially pay attention to. So I think Beasley is still capable of, being the. I mean, he had 700 yards and like 112 targets last year. So he's really just to like find a hole in the zone, stop, get Josh that 5 yards, fall down, that type of thing. And that's a play that the Bills have been missing, sure. So I'm intrigued to see how it fits in again. I'm intrigued, I really am. I'm excited about it. I'm glad to see that he's back, to be honest with you. I'm always for improving the team. I think Brown gives you a bit of a chance to stretch the field a little bit. Beasley gives you the underneath again. We'll see how much defenses respect them. And it starts this week. Let's transition into the Miami Dolphins, who are coming off back-to-back losses. 2 losses that really have people wondering if the Dolphins are contenders or pretenders. They lose to the Chargers on Sunday Night Football 23-17. They put together just 14 first downs. They've actually put together 14 first downs their last 2 weeks. So they did it this past week against the Chargers, the week before against the 49ers. They were sitting pretty at 8-3. They were riding a 5-game win streak. Granted, this is against Pittsburgh, Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, Houston. They go to San Francisco and they turn the ball over 4 times and they lose by 16 points. They go to LA and they can't complete a pass. I mean, Tua was like 3 of 18 or something at some point. Their touchdowns were a fumble recovery return that just happens to land in the arms of their fastest player, or the fastest player in the league, and he runs it for a touchdown, and then he gets loose behind, or gets feet tangled with a corner. The corner falls, Hill stays on his feet, and scores a touchdown. So, those count, of course, but, and this is like the takeaway point. They don't have a lot of yards if you start taking away these big plays that they're hitting. They hit a 75-yard touchdown on the first play against San Francisco 2 weeks ago and did not much else the rest of the way. So they're on offense that it's kind of, I don't want to say predicated on big plays. They don't necessarily rely on them, but that's certainly how they've been scoring lately. And they're a team that would, I think, this is weird, this might sound weird, but like Mike McDaniel wasn't he like the run game coordinator for San Francisco? So he would like to keep Mostert and keep Jeff Wilson going, and kind of set up the passes that way, and then just burn you deep with Hill and with Waddle. And they had a lot of success with that. They certainly had a lot of success with that earlier in the year. Not necessarily with running the football. They don't really have too many great rushing games. I think they've just kind of been in situations where Tua has had to throw. You look at the Baltimore game, or the Baltimore game for one, obviously. The Detroit game right around Halloween. I mean, they were just throwing that thing all over the yard. And, against secondaries that aren't very good. I think the Bills are a lot better. Even in the first matchup with the Bills, it was Kyer Elam and Christian Benford, and then Christian Benford got hurt, and Jamarcus Ingram came off the practice squad to play corner. Jaquan Johnson was the starting safety alongside Damar Hamlin. So you're going to have Poyer back. You're going to have Tre'Davious White back. You are going to have, I don't know who's going to be the other corner at this point. It might be Dane Jackson. He didn't play in that game because he suffered the injury on Monday Night Football against Tennessee. You can even look at the offensive side of the ball. There were offensive linemen going out left and right. Dawkins did make it through the whole game, but Mitch Morse didn't play, so Bates was the center, but he got hurt, or, just heat exhaustion or something, and Van Roten came in, and Greg Mance came in, and Tommy Doyle came in for Spencer Brown. It was just, and Quessenberry came in. Just a nightmare game. They were down to, they used every inch of that roster in that game. And I think that the Bills are healthier now. Not to say that the Dolphins aren't. I do know that Hill's battling a bit of an ankle injury. I expect him to play. Jeff Wilson battling a bit of a hip injury. I expect him to play. I say the Bills are healthier mostly just because they have Trey White and Jordan Poyer in the game. I think that's going to make a world of difference. I know that they still might be down a little bit on the line. Ryan Bates doesn't look like he's going to be able to play. So that interior offensive line, which is, hasn't necessarily been great. Certainly wasn't great against the Jets. Quentin Williams was having his way until he was injured, and then the Bills scored on 4 straight possessions, I believe, after he was injured. So Quinn Williams, all-pro caliber player. Not to say that the Dolphins don't really have that. I mean, Melvin Ingram's on the Dolphins. He has been giving the Bills problems the past couple of years, no matter what team he's been on. Christian Wilkins is a nuisance. He is a good player, but, he's a good player, okay? There's just this other side to him, like this attitude side where I don't know if he has a reputation necessarily for being dirty, but he's been ejected from a Bills game. There was, earlier this year, he was grabbing Josh by the crotch, apparently. We've heard about that as well. So that was just strange, but he's a fantastic player. Still have Xavier Howard, Javon Holland. You know the names. The weather may be a factor. We don't really know. We're still letting the forecast come into focus. It looks like it could be anywhere from it looks like it's going to snow. It's just a matter of will it be 2 inches or will it be more 6 or 8? And when will it be? So that's something to think about. I try not to get obsessed with the forecast because you can play against the weather or you can just play regardless of the weather, if that makes sense. You can let the weather affect you and affect your game plan, or you can just do what you want to do anyway and then be like, okay, well, it's too windy or something. Let's try something different. I hate when people default to the weather, and that's why I brought up that point earlier about Nance and Romo and Tracy Wolfson making such a big deal of it. Anyway, I'm going to pick the Bills. I'm picking the Bills to beat the Dolphins. I think weather will obviously have an impact maybe on the track, on the ability to stretch the field with deep plays and stuff. So I'm going to say, the Dolphins scored 17 points the past 2 weeks. Should we put them on for 17 3 weeks in a row? Let's do that. I'm going to say just a standard 24-17 Bills over Dolphins. And hopefully the Bills put their all into the next 3 games here, because they can almost salt away the division by beating Miami on Saturday. They'll be 3 games up with 3 games to go. There's still some tiebreakers that could come into play, but they'll be able to clinch the division on Christmas Eve against Chicago if they're able to win this Saturday. So that would be nice. And then big game coming up with Cincinnati. It's probably wrong to look ahead, but I say this all the time. We're fans. Of course we look ahead. It's only natural. But hopefully the Bills are just staying laser focused on Miami, because it's a big game. I mean, plain and simple, it's a big game. Anyway, guys, thank you for coming this far into the video. I'm sorry, my videos have been much longer this year. I guess I've just had more to say. But hit me up on Twitter. My Twitter handle and YouTube username are the same. Enjoy your weekend. As always, above all else, go Bills.